bit of housekeeping. There's a shiur tonight, and then God willing, there is a shiur next week, also 7 o'clock. I'll be away at the beginning of next week for RCA, but I'll be back, God willing, on Wednesday afternoon. So hopefully we will have an opportunity to learn. We'll try to do two things tonight. One is just to advance a little bit of the Gemara, and if there's time, I'll start laying some of the groundwork about some of the astronomical elements that we're going to need shortly about how things work in the world that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. Before we get there, let's at least cover a little bit of ground, and we'll see how far we get. I'm sorry, before we cover the ground in the new piece of the Gemara, if you recall, last we learned the end of Chet Amud Aleph to Chet Amud Bet was the idea that Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak had said that the reason why we have the Shanim as the Rosh Hashanah is in Tishrei is because of Din, right? Dichtiv, and those are the last four lines. Dichtiv Merishit Hashanah Ba'ara Charit Shana Merishit Hashanah Nidon Ma Yeheh B'Sofa Mimai De Tishrehu. How do you know it's Tishrei? That's going to happen. It's opposed to some other month. So we have a pasuk that we recite every Thursday. Right? Tiku b'chodesh shofar bakeseh liyom chagenu, and the drasha on those words, sound the shofar bakeseh, whatever keseh means, on the day of our festival. So ezu chag, the Gemara reads, ezu chag sheha chodesh mitkasebo, hevei omer ze Rosh Hashanah. What is the month upon which the month is occluded? It's hidden. There's a festival at the exact same time that we don't see the moon. All the other holidays are at some point into the month. Shavuot and Sukkot and Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot. They're in the middle. They're the 6th of Sivan in case of Shavuot, right? Yom Kippur is 10 days in. The only one we have that's actually at Rosh Chodesh is in Chodesh Tishrei, and that's the idea of Chodesh Mitkaseh Bo. So if you look at Tosafot, we hadn't had time to see this last time rather. Sorry, we should see Rashi first, since Rashi is going to be we'll see. You see it on top of the page in Rashi. You could look at Tosafot either way. I'm going to look in Rashi, top of page Chet Amud Bet. Shechodesh mitkasebo l'rechokin kigon shachrit livnei marav ve'arvit livnei mizrach lefish ktanahi samuch l'chidusha. So the word chodesh, the truth is, doesn't mean that the moon is entirely invisible. That's actually the molad. The chodesh means the levana b'chidusha means the first sliver of the moon being visible, and that's the beginning of the month. So when is it the chodesh mitkasebo? So Rashi says those who are far away, shacharit for those who are in the west, and arvit livnei mizrach because they'll be able to see just the faint sliver of the moon in the morning sky or in the evening sky. As you know, like today, the moon is out. If you look right now, you look outside. I tested this. I went outside and I made sure before I put my foot in my mouth. The moon is visible during the day very often. All right. This is also the subject of a Gemara in Chulin and Daf Samach, which we'll come to maybe tonight, maybe not, about the arguments of the sun and the moon about who would be of primary importance. Anyway, because it relays there also. The moon is visible, of course, during the day very often. So just the idea that it's hidden because you'll be able to see it, just for have a glimpse of it, depending where you live, just at the beginning or the end of the day. It's very, very faint. So in Tosafot here, Dibra Matcha Shechodesh Mitkasebo, Tosafot say, they quote Rashi, She'ein halavan near 8 l'rechokim kigon shach livnei maruv ve'arv livnei mizrach levishiktanahi samel chidusha kiperish hakontras. So Vehevi Rabbeinu Tam Raya. Rabbeinu Tam brought a proof to this idea from Vayikra Rabbah, Bit Parshat Emor Elakonim. I couldn't resist doing this tonight because now I have Dvar Torah for Parshat Emor, at least for Friday night. Maybe you could hold it over and do it for lunch also, Shabbos lunch, Parshat Emor. You have it right here. So Vayikra Parshat Emor Elakonim, the Ka'amar Hatam, what does it say there? Tiku v'chodesh shofar b'kas liyom chagenu. V'halo Nisan chodesh, right? V'nichseh, v'yesh bo chag. Well, maybe there's another chodesh we could have referred to, right? Bakeseh liyom chagenu. There's a chodesh in Nisan. It's actually the beginning of all the months, and it is also at the beginning it has its it has its designation, right? And it has a holiday within it. Ela zeh shechago bo bayom. It has to be, that the festival is on that very day. Remember the Haggadah, Yachim Rosh Chodesh? There's at least the Havamina. Yeah. So no. It has to be on the actual holidays on that day. Ve'ein lacha a chodesh unichsef. Right. V'yesh bo chag v'chago b'yomo ela Tishrei. You don't have a month that everything lines up like Tishrei. Therefore, that's what the pasuk must be referring to, right?
What do you mean by a month?
It's Rosh Chodesh and it's the holiday as the Torah prescribes. They're both the same day. So that's the idea. Idea number one. Number two, v'od mefarish Rabbeinu Tam among Chet, Amud Bet, and Tosafot, second of the wide lines. V'od mefarish Rabbeinu Tam mitkaseh mizuman. The word mitkaseh means something that is ordered or designated. How do we know? Kemo liyom hakisei yavo beito de Perek Chelek. Gabe Amun Moav. The Gemara Perek Chelek describes the Amun Moav shiveve bishi the Aradi Yisrael havu, two enemy neighbors of the Jewish people, Ammon and Moab, two enemies that do not exist anymore. Alavai noch weiter, with the remaining enemies of the Jewish people. So they went to Nebuchadnezzar and sent him a message, Liyom hakisei yavo beito. The word kisei here, with an aleph, not a hey, could mean the day of the throne, but also means the day that is set, established. I.e., the Gemara in Chelek explains, they were goading Nebuchadnezzar to attack Yerushalayim, which eventually he did do, and unfortunately disastrous results, destruction of Bayit Rishon. So Rabbeinu Tam says, well, that's also mitkaseh. In other words, there's something that is designated and given time. And the point being here that refers to Nisan, to Tishrei, excuse me, because Bakeseh Yom Chagenu, not just having to do with the moon, but it's the day of the Chodesh. Tiku b'Chodesh shofar. You'll say to me, but you don't blow shofar in Nisan. Yeah, you blow shofar in the Mikdash all the time, so maybe that's what it refers to. Bakeseh Yom Chagenu, a day that's designated for the day of our holiday. Well, what day is designated, which is also a day of Chodesh, is also the actual day of the holiday? That's only in Chodesh Tishrei with Rosh Hashanah. Rav Rabbeinu Meshulam Mefarish shechodesh mitkaseh bo she'ein chatat Rosh Chodesh karev b'Rosh Hashanah. He explains it that what's going on in the words here, chodesh mitkaseh bo, mitkaseh doesn't refer to the moon. It doesn't refer to a designation of the holiday and Rosh Chodesh as a conjunction, but rather the fact that something's covered over. What's covered over? There's no korban chatat on Rosh Chodesh, which is Rosh Hashanah. Recall that we have in our liturgy, when we daven on Rosh Hashanah, even if it's not Shabbos, if we pointed out before, we talked about before this year, you say that musfei, right? For Rosh Hashanah. Why musfei? Because there's the musaf of Rosh Hashanah and the musaf of Rosh Chodesh. It's also a day of Rosh Chodesh. But, says Rabbeinu Meshulam, what don't you give? The se'ir lechatat. That se'ir is not offered on Rosh Hashanah. And what's his proof text? K'dichtiv milvad olat hachodesh uminchata v'lo k'tiv milvad chatat ve'olah. Right. So the psukim talking about the korbanot of Rosh Hashanah say, and also the olat hachodesh, and its mincha means it's meal offering. It doesn't mention the chatat and the olah as two separate things. Just mentions the olah. Usually the chatat and the olah. What's the chatat? Se'ir lechatat. We mentioned this on Rosh Chodesh in the laning for Rosh Chodesh. Yeah. Se'ir lechatat la'Hashem. So it's not mentioned here. So when this came up as a discussion, so Rabbeinu Tam argued against Rabbeinu Meshulam. V'hikshir lo Rabbeinu Tam. The Bereish Tosefta de Shvuot, Tanya, beginning of the Tosefta in Masachet Shvuot, right? So it should be Lamed Bet, not Lamed apparently, but Lamed Bet Se'irim Makrivim Yisrael B'chol Shana. 32 Se'irim Lechatat are offered by the Jewish people all year long. B'chashiv Yud Bet Rosh Chodashim. It mentions there are 12 such offerings on the 12 Rosh Chodashim. When I read this Tosafot, I was wondering, well, maybe just referring to a leap year, so there's like a other Sheni, other Aleph, other Bet, but apparently not. The point is supposed to be in a regular year. Uv ofen the Musaf Rosh Hashanah. And in the Ofan of the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah, what is an Ofan? So you've probably heard of Yotzros. I've all heard of Brach Dodi. That's in it, right? So there was an addition they would put into the Nusach, written by people generally from the time of the Rishonim, among the Bali Tosafot, but usually carrying a tradition that was much earlier. One genre was called the Ofan. The Ofan is where we focus on the Ofanim, one of the types of Malachim. We actually, in our shul, we kind of skipped that. That's all the material in Birchot Kriyat Shema. In the first of Birchot Kriyat Shema, we skip to Vachayot, Shareru, etc., etc. But you can see there, especially Yom Kippur, you have Rosh Hashanah even also. A few pages in there. That's in that family. They're written by Bali Tosfot. Some have the minig to recite them, and some don't. Yeah, they're piyutim, but they're actually piyutim. They come from a very high source. So
it says most congregations omit.
Yeah, so we're most congregations. Uva Ofan the Musaf the Rosh Hashanah. So there's one for inside the Musaf Rosh Hashanah. The Chayot Asher Heina Merubaot. The name of it is called the Chayot. Another kind of angel, which are in English literally means they're square. But it means square. It means they're somehow on four sides of the Kisei HaKavod Minastam. Yasad Rebbe Lazar HaKaliri. Rebbe Lazar HaKaliri may have been one of the Balei Tosfot, or he may have been one of the Tanayim. This is literally a machloket that has not been, we're not machriya. There's a difference of like 900 years or something. Yeah. So the Rav has a whole piece on this in it's published in Moriv Rabbi Jacob J. Schachter's book. The Lord is righteous in all of his ways on the keynote. He has a whole shtickle Torah in there about who is the Kaliri and was he really one of the Rishonim? Was he really from the time of the Tanayim? But it was written by the Kaliri. The Kaliri, one of the most celebrated Paitanim, he wrote there, Musfei Chodesh Ashtei Esrei. Dahainu Parim Bnei Bakar Shnaim V'ayil Echad Pasim Bnei Shna Shiva V'Sa'ir Lechaper. So, in the times, there's been a Meshulam. Sorry, but I must tell you, the reality is that it's actually in this piyut. It's not only in the Tosefta where it says 32 Seirim, which means including, and it says there 12, one for each of the Rosh Chodesh, Seir Lechatat. It's also in what the Kaliri wrote. Again, it actually is a big nafkamina. Is this person a Rishon? Is this person a Tana? Yeah, because it's higher standing. He's a Tana. Either way, the point is in there it describes Seir Lechaper. So Veheshiv Rabbeinu Tam. So Rabbeinu Meshulam answered Rabbeinu Tam as follows. He said, Shelo Amar She'ein Bo Musaf, Ela Mitkaseh, Shelo Hizkir HaChachatat Bakra, Dimilvad Kemo Shehizkir Ola. What Rabbeinu Meshulam said back to him is, listen, I'm not saying there isn't going to be a chatat that is offered, Ayasir Chatat. I'm saying it's Davka Mitkaseh, it's not mentioned in the Pasuk. That's what I meant. That's Bakeseh Liyom Chagenu, because it says Sir Chatat LaHashem on Rosh Chodesh in Parsha Pinchas, but it's not in the description of the korbanot of Rosh Hashanah. So he says that's what I meant. I didn't mean there's no Sir Chatat, and your point is well taken. It's in the Tosefta. It's in the piyut of the Kaliri. Ve'od perush mitkaseh. What else is mitkaseh? Shein mazkir musaf Rosh Chodesh batfila. Interesting. According to this, we don't mention the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh in the Tefillah. Now, we actually sort of do. I just finished telling you that we kind of do. But we don't actually talk about Rosh Chodesh as such. We say Musfei, and that's the hint to it. And to my knowledge, we actually don't quote, correct me if I'm wrong, someone who knows the liturgy better than me, there's many fine Bali Tefillah here, you know it very well. It doesn't mention the psukim from Parshat Pinchas from Rosh Chodesh, right? Rosh Hashanah psukim you're going to get. You're not going to get the psukim, right? So the point is, it doesn't mention the Seir Lechatat in the Kriyat HaTorah. Okay. And Mishum da Amrinan, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Havale Brei, the Basis Kale. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel had a son who had a great voice. So Ayil Kame Tivuta, he got up in front of the Teva to daven. Kimati the Rosh Chodashim Ishtik V'loratzela Omro. Apparently, at some point there was a nusach in the days of the Tanayim that did mention Rosh Chodesh, and he was quiet. He didn't want to say anything out loud. He just was sitting quietly. Why? So the mutav, it shouldn't be perish, but it says the mutav shiov zakai v'yachaper ala chayav v'yavo chayav v'yachaper ala zakai. Perush how the Rosh Chodesh kori chayav Mishum de Amrinan, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Vilu Kapara v'chulei, Ad Kan Lishono. What is this? This is the aforementioned Gemara in Masechet Chulin. He didn't want to say out loud that one who was chayav would come to exonerate one who was zakai, but rather one who was zakai should exonerate one who was chayav. What's talking about? There's a Gemara in Masechet Chulin, very beautiful Gemara of amazing imagery, and it's an extremely deep Torah, if you could say that way. I mentioned it last night in the SCP, and you hear Agadah, you don't understand. You just don't understand the depth of the layers. There are many Agadas I read, and then decided one last night. I don't understand what's flying in them. This one, I have a little more of a handle on it. Everybody probably heard this medrash a million times, but it's the Gemara in Chulin Daf Samach. The moon complains to the Ribono Shel Olam there can't be two kings wearing one crown. This is quoted in Rashi right there. Shnei Amorot HaGedolim. And then it says, Hamor Gadol Mishal Hayom, Hamor Katon, Hakaton, I believe. Mishal Halayla. How come? Say, you were the one who spoke up to complain. You'll be smaller. Yeah. So then comes the complaint. You know, why are you making me smaller? And there's all sorts of things that the Ribono Shel Olam, so to speak, gives to the moon. Yaakov was younger. David HaMelech was younger. Look what they amounted to. You'll amount, etc. And he has the Kochavim, and that he'll be seen during the day and not only during the night. And the sun is only visible during the day and never at night. It's very beautiful Gemara. The last part of the Gemara is something like, the moon says basically to Kosh Baruch Hu, Afal Pichein. So Ribono Shel Olam says, okay, so you should bring a kapara for me, says Hashem, every month. Seir lachatat la Hashem. But the Ribono Shel Olam kiviyachol needs a kapara al shemi'atati et halavana, meaning there are imperfections in the world. Things don't exactly add up. We're trying to reconcile them. Part of it has to do with the discrepancy between the lunar and the solar year, the lunar and the solar size, the lunar and the solar role. The moon is not, it doesn't emit its own light, et cetera, yeah? All those things. So in the end, Ribono Shel Olam says, bring a kapara for me. So Rabbeinu Mishloim quotes this idea over here, retorting to Rabbeinu Tam, and he says, that story that Tanaim tell that Rabbi Shimon Gamliel didn't want to say out loud the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh in his davening. How come? Because if he would say that, then it would imply there's going to be a Sila Chatat La Hashem, which again, the Medrash is as if you're making penance, so to speak, for the Ribono Shel Olam, right? So he's chayiv in something. So he didn't want to say, because he'd rather that the Zakai, meaning Ribono Shel Olam, who really is Zakai, so it's just a Medrash, right? Is really bringing now a kapara for those who are really chayavim, and that's us who are being judged. So he didn't want to say it. So Rabbeinu Mishloim said that's what it means. Mitkaseh, it shouldn't be in the davening. Mitkaseh, that it's not in the Torah's listing of it either in the Korban of Rosh Hashanah. Rabbeinu Tam Ragila Haskir V'Lomam Milvad Olat HaChodesh U'L'Saim U'Shnei Siirim L'Chaper Chad Rosh Chodesh V'Chad Rosh Hashanah. Just so you know, the Gemara, the Tosafot ends here. Rabbeinu Tam, he didn't have such compunctions. He mentioned Milvad Olat Chodesh, and he would finish. Because we mentioned Rosh Chodesh in his davening, and in his nusach, he'd also mention the Shnei Siirim L'Chaper, one of Rosh Hashanah, which is a seer not L'Chaper, it's L'Chaper for us, but also seer L'Hashem. It's the only formulation seer L'Hashem is in the parsha of Rosh Chodesh and parsha Pinchas. Everyone with me? Did I lose you? Too much quoting? You understand what's going on? So the discrepancy. What does this word Bakeseh mean? Keep it out of the davening. Look, it's not in the Torah. Maybe it has to do with the onset of the Yom Tov itself. There's something we're learning from it. And here you have a good example. You're bringing in, marshaling sources from the Machzor itself, what's in this person's Machzor and that person's Machzor. This is all before the printing press. So whatever you had copied is what you had, yeah? Okay. Yeah, please, Judah.
I lived 3 years in Lexington, Kentucky. In our shul was a young man, a little bit younger than me.
Yeah.
By the name of Stephen Caller, and they have the
manuscript
story or whatever, and they come from Rabbi Taviri.
Wow. Did he have a poetic soul? Did he write? Was he artistic? Did he write poetry or something?
He was a lady. I don't know
if. Nice. Okay. All right.
So. He's still around.
Interesting. Still in Lexington?
Well, yeah, he's now in Florida. But
okay, he made Aliyah.
He
made Aliyah. It's nice, but he still has a home there. Okay, Femod. That's a very nice thing. I mean, look, someone's got to be descended, I guess, of people from many generations ago. Sometimes they know.
He was very proud.
It should be. So the Kaliri wrote many of the keynote that we have, and many of the piyutim that we have in our sidurim, for sure, for sure. Well, he didn't know. I mean, I guess he didn't know. Right, right. There's a whole dion back and forth, and it's strange, right, that someone of such prominence not even sure to approximately 900 years, not sure in a certain range when he lived, which is quite something. Anyway, because again, it speaks to the authority of whatever it is that he said. Looking them toward the end of the narrow lines in the Gemara, the word is Vili Yovelot. Remember, we had that Tishrei is the Rosh Hashanah for the Shanim, Shmitin v'Yovelot. We talked about Shemitah actually last time. We learned that in the Gemara. So we're up to the piece about Yovel. Yeah. So Yovelot be'echad b'Tishreihu. The Gemara says, we kind of saw this part of the Gemara before, but sometimes the Gemara is organized, the redaction of the Gemara will put in a piece that you already actually, it'll sound very familiar because we just did it. It's on the previous pages. We just found it, Rabbi Shmuel, Benosh Rabbi Yochanan Baruch. We're going to see it now. So the first question is, Yovelot is Aleph Tishrei B'echad b'Tishreihu, Yovelot b'Yud b'Tishreihu, right? Dichtiv b'Yom HaKippurim, Ta'aviru Shofar. This is already, we're up to Parshat Bahar. So you have from Emor, then you have something from Bahar. Early. So we don't keep putting Tavu Shofar. So that it's not Aleph. So Hamani, Rabbi Yishmael Benosh Rabbi Yochanan ben Brokahi, Detanya, Vikidashtem, 8. I think it is. Yes. 8. Thank you. 8. Shnat HaChamishim, Shana. So Ma Talmud Lomar. Why is that being taught to us in Pasuk Yud? Lefi shenemar bi Yom HaKippurim, Yachol lo tehei mitkadesh ela Yom HaKippurim ve'elach. You might have thought that it would be from Yom HaKippurim and onward. Talmud lomar v'kidashtem et 8 shnat ha'chamishim lamed shemitkadeshet ve'holechet mitchilata. It starts from the very beginning. It's going to be right when the year arrives. It's Yovel. So mikan amar Rabbi Yishmael Benosh Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, Rosh Hashanah ad Yom Kippurim, for the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. In other words, according to Rabbi Yishmael Benosh Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, already at the onset of the year of Yovel, the slaves are freed. However, they don't leave immediately. They sit for 10 days. Sigazont. Rosh Hashanah ad Yom Kippurim lo hayu avadim niftarin levatehen velo mishtabdin la'adonehem. They neither go home nor are they enslaved anymore. Ella. Of course, you think about a world in which there are classes, the class of the masters and the class of the slaves. So just what you were going to read now should be a striking contrast to what the slave must have been engaged in the previous years. What does it do for 10 days? So they're sitting, eating and drinking, and they're wearing crowns that they're going to be freed. Kevin Shigir Yom Kippurim, Taku Beitim Bashofar. Meaning, those 10 days, the slaves are free. The shofar will be the signal they can go home. But those 10 days, they're basking in their newfound freedom. Where? At the master's table, right? Or tables, and the shulchanot. There were little tables in those days, but right, just sitting with a crown, not working, right? A graduation, if you will. And they're waiting for the opportunity that they're going to go free. If you look at Rashi, B'kidasim shana chamishim, matamud lomar, mikeven she'amar sheva shabbatot shanim, ve'avarta shofar, trua, b'chodesh hashvi'i, yodeh ani shnat chamishim. Like there's no chiddush. I knew it was the 50th year, right? And that you should sanctify the 50th year. What's it coming to teach us? Right, so what does it actually teach us? First, you have to sound the shofar, which is going to be on Yom Kippurim, which is called the 10th day of Rosh Hashanah, actually, in Tanakh. In the 10th day of Rosh Hashanah, they're going to sound the shofar, and it's not Yovel, then they're going to go free. V'lo mishtabdin, but they're not going to be enslaved those 10 days. Dichtiv v'kidashtem 8 shnat chamishim. So you have to sanctify the whole year, starting Rosh Hashanah. That implies that you're also going to free the slaves. If he wants, lasum atar barosho, to put a crown on his head, laharot sheyatsa chofshi, or sheyatsa chofshi, actually, he's going free. Now, I don't know if the crown is made of gold or they made it out of like construction paper. The havdil like they had in the school, the kid gets a birthday crown. I don't know what kind of crown it was. I mean, he was a slave, so suddenly they bring him out a crown. The point is some distinctive symbol of freedom. Exactly. So that's the idea. V'Rabbanan, go back to the Gemara, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up from the bottom, third word in from the bottom of the page, and Amud Bet in the Gemara. V'Rabbanan, how do they explain it? Shanim atam kadesh v'atam kadesh chodashim. The point of repeating this idea about v'kidashtam 8 shnat hachamishim is to tell you you're going to be makadesh the years. And if you look at Rashi, Shanim Atam Kadesh, Kishishnat Yovel Nichnasa, Mitzvah al Beitin Lomar Mekudash El Hashana. They're going to announce that via Atam Kadesh Shum Chodesh. Kalav Lazar Rabbi Shimon, the Amar Lakaman Perak Sheni, Ben Shinir Bismano, Ben Shaloni Bismano, Ein Mekachin Oto v'Yoliv Time and Mehalcha. All right, so this will be later on. We'll see this in Daf Chav Daled. Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon holds that you don't actually say out loud Mekudesh. You don't have to announce it. That's the Rabbanan here reflects his opinion. Not everyone agrees to that, as we'll see shortly. But the point is, it starts really from the very beginning of the year. The impact of it will not begin until the 10th. That's when you go below the shofar. But the Shnat HaYovel, in terms of the Kiddush of that time, okay, it starts at the beginning of the year. That's all. And that's what it meant. It didn't mean that slaves go free on Rosh Hashanah. It just meant that you have that, according to Rabbanan, they don't do anything from day 1 of Tishrei till day 10. They're still slaves. On the 10th, they get freed. But the idea is that the onset of the year was the declaration. Okay, Mekudesh, it's already it's already going to be the time period of Yovel. Tanya Idach. So what is how are you going to explain the next section here? Yovel he Matumud Lamar. It already says Yovel he. So what are you learning from those words? L'fishenemar v'kidashtem 8 shnat chamishim yachol kshem shemitkadesh v'olechet mitchilata kach mitkadesh v'olechet besofa. The same way that it's going to start from the very beginning, right? V'achar Rashi yachol kach mitkadeshet besofa achar Rosh Hashanah v'timshoch ad Yom Kippurim. You might think that when it says in the Mishnah that Rosh Hashanah for Yovel is on Aleph Tishrei, really it meant Yud Tishrei, just like Nisan, it says L'Regalim, but really it's 15th of Nisan, but it means like sometime in the month. So you might have thought, but because it's 8 Shnat HaChamishim Shana, maybe it means you have to keep the Yovel year until the 10th of Tishrei in year 51. No. Kamash Malan, no. Right? So, you might have thought that's the case because after all, we have a principle that we're Mosi Michol HaKodesh, right? Rashi, Im Shamrin Ota Betoch Shana Shela Achareh. If we're going to keep it in the year that follows after it, right? We're going to see on Daf Tet, there'll be a discussion about Tosafet Yom Kippur, Tosafet Shemitah, Tosafet Yom Kippurim, Tosafet Shabbat, Tosafet Yom Tov. Maybe there's Tosafet Yovel. Maybe it goes one extra step as well. So the Gemara says no. So Talmud Lomar Yovel he, and the point is Yovel he means it's a miyuta he. It's to stop to tell you that it's just going to be there, all right? Yovel he Shnat HaChamishim Shnat Yovel he Shnat HaChamishim Atam Kadesh V'Atam Kadesh Shnat HaChamishim Ve'achat. It's not going to go to the next year. You might have thought maybe it should, but it's not going to. V'Rabbanan. What do the Rabbanan hold? After all, as Rashi here points out, you see Rashi's filling in the gaps here for us tonight. The top of the page, Tet Amud Aleph. V'Rabbanan do lo yalfim v'kidashtem shetiv kadesh mitchilata. They don't hold it that's the kiddush from the beginning. They just think it's sometime in that month. Lo yitzarich, right? And they don't require it. V'lo yitzarich hi lemeute sofa. Darshilei hachi shnat chamishim atamoneh v'atamoneh shnat yovel shnat chamishim lesof yovel she'avar ve'achat leminyan yovel haba v'atamoneh shnat yovel haba ela mishana shel achar yovel. What's going on? There's a machloka between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda about what year the yovel year is. Everybody agrees it's year 50. So you're counting like Sfirat HaOmer, so the Sfirat HaYovel. So you count it. You get to 49, comes the 50th year. Mazel Tov, it's Yovel. So is Yovel a blank year in the Shemitah cycle? And after year 50, The next year is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or is Yovel year 1 of the Shemitah cycle? That's a pretty big nafkamina. And it would actually, by the by, be a pretty big nafkamina in terms of knowing when Shemitah is today, wouldn't it? Yeah. But we haven't done Yovel in a very, very long time. So, well, we haven't done Yovel since sometime in there was a Beit HaMikdash. And if we don't have Yovel, so then is the count totally off? You understand? If Yovel is a blank year. So if you look at Talmud, Rabbanan, Shnat Chamishim Atamoneh, V'yat Tamoneh, Shnat Chamishim, V'achat. You're not going to count. There's a comma there that Rashi is telling you to put in. Basically, you're not going to count it as the 50th year and the first year. La Fukim Rabbi Yehuda, to exclude Rabbi Yehuda, to get rid of Rabbi Yehuda's point. If you look at Rashi in the narrow lines, the narrow lines, the Amar b'Masechet Nedarim Shnat Chamishim Ole Lekan Ulekan Shnat Yovel Shana Rishon L'Shmita Ba'a. Year 50 is because it's the Yovel year, and year 1 of the new Shemitah cycle. You better hope we follow Rabbi Yehuda, by the way, because if not, yeah, you understand? Otherwise, we're missing all the Yovels, and the time is really messed up. The Rishonim already deal with this question and essentially say, yeah, without Yovel, we're just Shemitah every 7 years, and that's it, right? People use the expression to Shnata Yovel, but it doesn't mean what it means in the Torah. Yeah. So just for consideration, and here this is the Gemara says the Amar Shnat Chamishim Ole Lekan Ulekan. Kamash Malan Dilo. We're just not going to go down that path. Basically, we're gonna recognize that the Rabbanan disagreed. They thought the 50th year was going to be a standalone for Yovel, and then you would start the cycle for Shemitah anew at the arrival of the new year afterward. There was a question. I don't know, mess it up. I think I wrote it down. I'm not sure.
If the first year is 1, if Yovel is also year 1 of Shemitah, you're going to go through 49 years, but that first year
was like a double count. Yeah, I guess.
No, it's still 49.
It's still 49 years? 49 years, but the point is if it's the first year.
Right, from the first year of 1 Shemitah cycle to the first year of 7 Shemitah cycles later is still 49 years. It's 7 times 7. It's not just.
But if you double up and the Shemitah year, which is supposed to be year 50, is also year 1 of the next count.
Right, but so it's as if Yovel doesn't exist as far as the Shemitah cycle. It just circles around once every 7
times.
So it's still 49 years apart.
Do Shemitah practices apply in Yovel, or is it strictly an ownership matter?
Right. So 3 things happen on Yovel. 1 is the slaves go free. 2, everyone gets their land back. And 3, it's just like Shemitah.
What is?
Yeah.
So if you need to have a Munah for Shemitah, for Yovel, you'd have Noch and a Munah, because it's 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row. So I don't think I wrote down the notes, so I don't want to butcher it. The Sfas Emes makes the point that it's a continuity from the year before. Whenever Yovel happens, it's always going to be on the heels of a Shemitah year. So there's a bit of a question if it's on the heels of a Shemitah year. So why are you saying it's Rosh Hashanah for Yovel? You must refer to the Rosh Hashanah component, not about the Isra Avodat Karka. It must be about the return of the land, and it must be about the Shluach Havadim. And that's Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan Broka's point, is that the Isser of the Avoda is a continuity, Avodat Karka, from the year before to the new year. So who cares? It's counting the Yovel, not it's now the Yovel, it starts at Tishrei. The Avodat Karka is constant. The Chiddush is if something else changes at that Rosh Hashanah. What's that? Slaves getting freed at that time, sitting 10 days. Yeah, that's why it's a strong question. Something along those lines.
And the third thing is loans.
Huh?
The third thing is loans. That
No, not loans, not loans. The land goes back to people. The loans is on Shemitah. Yovel is anyone who had to mortgage their land or even sell their land, in fact, in a plot of land in the countryside, will get it back based on the nachla of the Shvatim. Nachla of the Shvatim. Okay.
I think we just learned that if you sell land with a finite number of years,
Okay.
let's say it's the 48th day of the cycle,
48th year of the cycle.
48th year of the cycle,
Okay.
and you sell your property for 10 years, then it doesn't go back to
It's
Yovel.
stipulated.
It's stipulated, it's in the contract, it's a 10-year sale.
It'll override Yovel.
Yes, it doesn't. Then you
This
can
is
go
it.
8
This
years
is
into-
where this is in Ezu
I don't know where
Nashach.
I just learned this. I think maybe it's Dr. Yovi, but I just learned it. And it's
Fascinating.
surprising to me. That's why I,
Thank you for that. Thank
I
you.
just-
Yeah. Okay. So that's the Shemitah Yovel. I don't want to start the next sugya yet, because that's already getting into the issue of Tosafot here and there and everywhere. Maybe I'll just use this opportunity to start whetting the appetite a little. We have, what time is it?
7:50.
50, so I have a little time.
15 minutes.
Yeah,
So
we-
I don't about a little time. Let's just talk a little bit about some of the issues that we're going to need shortly, and we will hopefully soon dial back to the Tosafot on Chet Amid Aleph, where there was a declaration made on Chet Amid Aleph that that maybe the issue of the shanim that are being referenced in the Mishnah here, when it said that Tishrei B'Echad B'Tishrei Rosh Hashanah l'shanim for years. So one of the opinions here was that Rabbi Zera had said that it was Litkufa. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? Matni lad Rabbi Zera Amar Rabbi Zera Amar Litkufa. Rabbi Eliezer he de Amar B'Tishrei Nivra Ha'olam. Yeah. So maybe it has to do with the Tkufa. Maybe that's why it said that the Rosh Hashanah l'shanim is Aleph Tishrei. So one of the possibilities was, well, we're trying to figure out why to say shanim. In what way is that true? The one we know that was most readily available to us is because it's a new year, because 5784 started, so it's a new year, because we're being judged on that time. So that's the time of din, is on that time period of Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, it's Rosh Hashanah l'shanim. That's how we experience it. But remember, there were also other possibilities that came up. One of them was that had to do with the shtarot again. And we said, well, what about the Malachim, Rosh Hashanah Malachim from Chodesh Nisan? So kind of repeating again, why is it in a different language? Shanim versus Malachim. Remember, Rosh Hashanah Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan is Rosh Hashanah Malachim, V'Liragalim is the first thing we learned. Ayin Sham, the Mishnah B'Adam Al. Now we're looking at Tishrei, and it's mentioning Shanim. So why? So one of the issues, and then we had Rav Chizdan. Rav Chizdan, all that had to do with bringing up the psukim about trying to show that it was the case. And then it mentions maybe Rabbi Chizda actually holds like Rabbi Zera, that really it's a question of the Tekufa, and Rabbi Eliezer is who we follow from the Machloket Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. When was the world created, in Tishrei or in Nisan? Rabbi Eliezer holds in Tishrei, Rabbi Yeshua holds in Nisan. Yeah. So a lot of philosophical conversations we could have about this, but for tonight, I'm going to skip all that. We should have those some other time. We'll get to when we get to Yud. Yud Amid Bet, Yud Aleph Amid Aleph, Yud Aleph Amid Bet. There'll be discussion there. But just to understand that Chazal had a very advanced view of what was happening astronomically. And they needed to, because they needed to know what was going to happen in terms of Rosh Chodesh and keeping time. Tosafot here goes into a long excursus.
In the 80s, to make sure.
Right, and they also had to question the Eidim. They also had to question the Eidim, but the questioning of the Eidim, as it turns out, was not really to find out information, and they were just, pardon the pun, taking a stab at it in the dark. They actually knew it's Rosh Chodesh now. They knew because Chazal already had a Masorah, and the Masorah was a great understanding, a very detailed understanding of how the heavens function. Very detailed. But for ritual purposes, if you will, because it's a mitzvah, they also required it to be done al pi re'iyah. But it wasn't just like, we'll just wait. Hey, there's no moon. Oh, someone going to come tell us what time it is? They knew exactly when it was. And that's why if you'll see later in the Masechta, you're going to have Rabbi Gamliel doing things based on his calculation. Right, it's coming up. Exactly. You read ahead. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. So the tekufa means the season. There are 4 seasons. The tekufa of the sun actually refers to the sun itself, is the fact that the sun is itself going to have the earth revolve around it one time. We call that a year. And it's divided into 4 parts. And each of those 4 parts, aka 4 seasons, are named Nisan, Tammuz, Tishrei, and Tevet. In each of the Tkufot, say it this way, sorry. Shmuel in the Gemara in Masachet Eruvin says that the Tkufa of Nisan always happens on a 6-hour mark. And we'll take for our purposes a perfect day, perfect halachic day, 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of nighttime. So 6 a.m. sunrise, 6 p.m. sunset. The Tkufa will always be either at midnight, 6 a.m., 12 noon, or 6 p.m. That's it. It's going to be, according to Shmuel, always at a revia, on a quarter line. And between each tekufa, from one tekufa to the next tekufa, there's going to be a discrepancy each time. You can know what the next one is going to be because from one tekufa to the next is always 91 days, 7 hours, and 30 minutes. Same thing every time. So like you see when they announce the molad is, right? So if you want to know what the tekufa is, it's the molad 3 times over. That's what it ends up being. That's the tekufa. And that is always 91 days, 7 hours, and 30 minutes after the previous one.
That's why we announced it here.
But the tekufa of Nisan could be midnight, 6 a.m., noon, or 6 p.m. And based on that, you're going to start figuring out when the next tekufa will be. We care about these tekufot very much because we need Pesach to be b'chodesh ha'aviv. And we know that a solar year, not to be confused with the sidereal year, which we'll talk about another time, but the solar year is 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 46 seconds. And the idea that's the number, that's the scientific number, that's nasa.gov. What we have, according to our calculation, is the time for all of the Earth to have revolved one time around the sun is 365.25 days, even. So there's a discrepancy of a few minutes there. Right? I just told you 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 46 seconds versus 6 hours. So that's the notion of the tekufa. We're very interested because there's a discrepancy between the lunar year, which is a total of 354 days and change. Right? The lunar year is 354 days, 8 hours, and what are called 876 chalakim, which we'll learn another time. We don't have time for tonight already. Right? So the discrepancy of approximately 11 days means that every year the Jewish calendar, so to speak, is moving up by 11 days versus the solar calendar. So the lunar calendar and the solar calendar get fixed. How's that? You add an extra month. How do you add an extra month? Well, when we get into it, we'll understand why this is the case. You need a leap year 7 times in a 19-year cycle. Why a 19-year cycle? Why is that? Who cares? Where they come up with the number 19? So we'll see. The number 19 is very significant. Right, exactly. That's going to be the balancing out. 19 years is 235 months. So that's 19 years times 12 months, plus the 7 extra months that have been added, scattered over the 19 years. That's gonna bring it about. And why are they on specific years? Why are they on the 19-year cycle? Year 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, 17, and 19. Waiting for someone to just scream bingo. But that's it, the Powerball or something. But that's 7 times 12 pshutot and 7 meubarot in a 19-year cycle. And it always goes according to that approach. We're going to see, though, that there's going to be a discrepancy between the solar years and the lunar years in those 19 years. Not very much of a discrepancy. The discrepancy is 2 hours. So in 19 years, everyone agrees that 6,939 days have elapsed in 19 years, both the solar and the lunar. The problem is that for the solar, it's 6,939 and 18 hours, and for the lunar, it's 6,939 and 16 hours and 595 chalakim. Is everybody dizzy yet? You have to see it like on a chart. We're going to have to do this with charts. There's no other way. We're going to go daven mincha. I hope I confused you enough. The point is, what we're going to start to learn, and we're going to need it. This is part of the halacha. What is now the molad? What does that refer to? What's the molad versus the chodesh? What is that versus the tekufa? How did Chazal calculate it? What did they understand? Which is actually a very sophisticated understanding of how all of these things fit. And that's what Tosafot's getting into about this claim that maybe this Mishnah paskins like Rebbe Eliezer, or maybe it doesn't. We'll have to see the Tosafot when we get there. Ad Kan for tonight. Next week, there will be a Shir God willing, 7 p.m.